Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Connect and Share on a Friday morning, 10 o'clock Sydney time. And I'm Laurie Moe, the CEO of Outdoors New South Wales and ACT. And right beside me in another city or another town is Leslie, who's is also part of Outdoors New South Wales and ACT for anything that you need from us. Firstly, may I pay our respects to our Aboriginal people past, present and emerging from the lands in which we come from today and we all meet, and remember that their history and their education of the land is very important to our aspects as we get everyone involved in the outdoors and bring a little bit of their knowledge and expertise into what we do makes such a big difference in educating others on our lands. So quick rundown of the week that was, and my goodness, what a week it was. The Take 3 for the Sea guys were with us last week, if you remember, and they've asked anyone that is in the tourism space or the adventure tourism space to get involved in their project, and today is the last day that you can actually put your comments into their survey to help educate what this program is going to look like. And if you remember that when you fill out this survey, this will derive the tools and resources that Take 3 for the Sea are going to provide you as tourism operators to help educate others on a sustainable approach to our land. So if you are in tourism, jump on board. It's a really important project and one that Outdoors New South Wales and ACT is very proud to be part of, in conjunction with National Parks and Wildlife and also the New South Wales Environment Protection Authority. So jump on board and get your comments in. Now, you might remember that NOAC Abstracts closed last week, so we have a program coming out very early next week for you all, and look forward to seeing that. It looks incredible, and thanks to our committee who's done an amazing job in getting the real content to you on this conference, and there's some real great topics that I can already see coming through. So the program will be released at next week's Connect and Share. Unfortunately, Leslie and I won't be with you because we are in an intensive workshop, but certainly Mark Brackenreg, who is on our board and also steering the committee of NOAC, will be joining you to give you that update on the program, and hopefully also some of the other committee members will be joining Mark and helping tell you a little bit more about what to expect should you come up for the National Outdoor Education Conference in Lura in September. So we're looking incredibly forward to that. And then a reminder about the recovery grants that the Commonwealth Bank's put out. Remember, you don't need a Commonwealth Bank account for this, but if you're part of a school, a part of a PNC, they've got some great grants that can fund things that you might have lost in the recent flood disaster. So a great opportunity to get on board and get some of those outdoor equipment back into the school if they were flood affected. This was a big week for curriculum, if you hadn't noticed. So for those that are in the outdoor education space, incredibly important to keep an eye on this. I, for one, haven't had the chance to go through it. It only got released on Thursday, but certainly we encourage everyone in outdoor education to jump onto the AAAS website. You can see Janice there, who gives a beautiful overview of the changes that are being recommended through the curriculum review in PDHPE. And you can have your say. And this is incredibly important because we can't sit by and if we're not happy with something, not say something, because this helps form this into a better curriculum and a better outcome for our students. So please, if you want to take a photo of that QR code or scan that QR code now, it'll take you straight to the website where you can review the curriculum update and the review of what they're recommending, and then have your own say. So incredibly important, get involved if you want to see a difference in this. And quite timely, probably 2 days earlier, the New South Wales curriculum for K-2 came out. And this is also open for feedback. So obviously from a nature play sense, this is incredibly important to review. So if you're in that space with K-2 or even preschool, it'd be a good idea to have a look at this and certainly put your feedback into that portal. The OCA Summit is coming up. So you might remember we spoke about this for a couple of weeks now. It is stage 1 of a national collaboration on improvement for our outdoor industry. And if you were invited and you have accepted your attendance to this, you would have been sent a survey either yesterday, or you might even receive it today if you're being advised or invited by another state, but we encourage you to complete that survey if you are part of that little network. That will inform how this process runs, this summit process. So it goes across all different topics in the outdoors, and we ask you to take a serious 10 minutes to look at this survey and complete that for us by the due date, which is the 10th of May. So it needs to be done, submitted by then, so we have enough time to work with the facilitator on mining that data ready for the summit on the 25th of May. So, and yeah, you'll get the Zoom details very soon. So we'll look forward to seeing you there. The first meeting in June for the Connect and Share will give you a summary of what actually occurred at that summit. So we can give you a rundown if you couldn't attend, or if you weren't invited to attend that particular stage of this this project. We'll give you a rundown on some of the happenings and discussions. We have a jam-packed agenda for Connect and Shares coming up. So all of May is now programmed, and the first one in June. So today, obviously, we are talking about the AAAS pilot project for auditing. So next week, we're talking about the National Outdoor Education Conference. The week after, I have the Department of Regional New South Wales coming to announce a new grant opportunity, particularly tailored towards sport and recreation. So very exciting news on that one. And that will take half the session, and the rest of the session will give you some tips and hints on how to apply for grants and what to look for when you actually submit any sort of application for some funding. The following one is very exciting. We've been working with the New South Wales Business Chamber on how we connect more people to the outdoors. So we'll have Apprenticeship Centre come to us that day to talk about getting more involved in traineeships in the outdoors, and how we can work with them to certainly get more people interested in working in the outdoor industry. And yeah, that's happening on the 21st of May. And on the 28th of May, we're going to have a guest live streaming from Borneo, someone who's in the outdoors, and they'll give us a bit of a snapshot on what's going on over there in the outdoor space. So a bit of a different turn of events, but something quite interesting and fun. And then OCA Summit summary will be the 4th of June. Don't forget the other events that are coming up. We've got the Parks and Leisure Conference, New South Wales ACT in Queensland. That's happening in May as well in Coffs Harbour. The Local Government Destination Conference in Port Macquarie, and then the Outdoor Retailers Exhibition in Melbourne. So that's on the 29th, 30th and the 1st of June. And of course, NOAC, don't forget NOAC. And we have our AGM aligned with that. So the Outdoors New South Wales ACT AGM will be held in Lura the day before NOAC starts. And then I believe the Parks and Leisure Australia National Conference will also be in September, so being held at Sydney Olympic Park Authority. We have some news. We have a new subcommittee being announced. So our board approved a brand new subcommittee at a request of some of our members around climate change. And this helps us get a little bit more of an understanding of what we can do as the outdoor industry in the topic of climate change. So we're calling for members now. If you're interested in putting yourself forward for this subcommittee, I urge you to complete the form that that link will take you to, and tell us a little bit about why you'd like to be part of that subcommittee. And we'll certainly put that to our board of directors for approval and come back to you in advice. The Outdoor Education Group have a really great initiative coming up on the 13th of May at 11 a.m. And they're hosting a webinar where they're asking everyone to come along and ask questions about working in the outdoors or working with OEG. So if you've got people that you think are trying to get into the industry or actually want to look at OEG as next career step, this might be a great opportunity for them. So certainly jump onto that website and register your interest at that seminar, and it might provide some great content for those that are wanting to work for OEG. And a final reminder about our annual membership review. This is an opportunity where all of our members are encouraged to tell us about what you do like that we do for you, what you don't like what we do for you, and maybe some ideas about things that you need from us as your peak body in New South Wales and the ACT. So if you haven't filled that out already, this is a great opportunity to do so, and that way we can amend and cater accordingly. So that takes us to today's topic. And I think when I was thinking about this today, what we we're going to do today, I thought there's quite a lot of different accreditation systems out there that we've got to reflect on in other industries, and how do we make best use of these accreditation systems available? As we know, medicine has a medical board, engineers has Engineers Australia, etc., etc. All of these have a very similar approach to how they manage their industry. In the outdoors, we have the AAAS, we have the Australian Activity Adventure Standards. And whilst it's not mandatory, we certainly encourage all of our people in the outdoors to follow these standards to ensure the best risk management approach for their business and their activity. So why is it that still people don't understand more about it? I think from our perspective, we're trying to get the knowledge of the AAAS, but also the language of the AAAS embedded in all different systems. And I know Jay's on the line and he's doing some great work with the Quality Tourism Framework and getting that language embedded into that accreditation system. And likewise, we're working with other landholders and managers and owners to also understand the importance of this. We had a lot of operators come to us recently around insurance renewals and the difficulty in getting that. And when I spoke to the insurance sector, they were very much of the opinion that if they had a process that they could easily look at and identify that matched standards or best practice, that their evaluation of that business would be a lot easier. So that started a lot of conversations around, okay, how do we provide tools and resources to our industry to look at that, to make it easier for our insurance brokers and our partners to look at our businesses and see that we are less risky. So we discussed it broadly. We came up with the AAAS audit process. And this is a draft or a pilot program that we're looking at to help all businesses review their practices against the AAAS. So I'm so pleased. I think I've got 2 of my assessors online. I don't think I've got my 3rd one, but if I can welcome Liz and Jeffrey, who are 2 of our auditors for this program. And I thought today is a great way that we can look at all the different outcomes that this program could help with, whether it be educating our insurers, our partners, our customers, our schools, telling them that we meet the best practice in this, and the audit program can do this for us. So I might actually ask Liz and Jeffrey just to unmute themselves for the moment. And if one of you wants to just sort of give us an idea on what the audit program means to you. And what do you think it could do for the industry?
You want to go first? Oh. Yeah, I'm happy to. I think it's, you know, when we look at the history of where we've come from with the adventure activity standards and the resulting work of 100 plus professionals in the industry, where they've gone and said, hey, this is good practice. Not necessarily best practice, but this is good practice. If you're achieving this, you're doing good practice. So I think what we have is we have the adventure activity standards and good practice guides that exist now. And we have people saying they're using them and they're complying to them. And so they're filling out paperwork. They're either filling out accreditation paperwork in either one of the two accreditation schemes, or they're saying to national parks or state parks when they're getting a license, yes, I comply with the adventure activity standards. And they're telling their insurance companies, yes, I comply with the adventure activity standards. But there's no one who's actually saying, do you? How do you? And what are you doing to do that? And so I think this audit trial is a great opportunity for us to say, part of the adventure activity standards and the idea behind it was, let's open the doors and let people see what we're doing. Let's have people understand what good practice is, and let's have people commit to it. And so the audit process is an opportunity to take somebody who's outside your organisation, who can come and have a look at your policies and procedures and how you do things, and say, hey, listen, they do comply with the intention behind the adventure activity standards and good practice guides. If you don't have something written down, for starters, it doesn't comply. And that's the reality. So we've started the idea of this audit process that says, let's at least start at that stage to do a review of your policies and procedures and the way you do your work. And it's primarily a desk audit. From my perspective, I'll also be doing an interview with management and also try and do a couple of interviews with staff. Because there's one thing to say, I've got my policies and procedures, and the only way that you can check whether or not they're actually being used by your organisation is to talk to the management to say how and why and what was your thinking when you put it together, and then check with the staff people to say, actually, do you use them? What would happen in this circumstance? Are you aware? So that idea of a simple, it's sort of like a one-day audit, 8 hours of somebody looking at your organisation, having a conversation with a few people from your organisation and saying, hey, we've looked at all this, and from what we can tell, the policies and procedures that you have in place mean that if you use those, then you're actually complying with the adventure activity standards. So it's an exciting opportunity to have somebody outside your organisation step in. Yeah, Jeffrey, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, look, I agree with everything Liz has just said. The one thing I would add is, having worked with these with different audits in the past, a big thing from my perspective, other than the assurance you get as an organisation that yes, we are working through things well, or maybe not so well, and we know where we can improve now. And that's the big part for me, is that having that external person look at it with you gives the opportunity for learning and going, you know what, we hadn't considered that part, or yes, there is an opportunity to improve on that aspect. So while a really positive audit that says, yes, you've got it all fantastic, thank you, is useful, the I don't have it all and here's where we're falling down is also useful, because it is an opportunity to learn and also pick up and engage at a different level, and improve the success of your organisation, but the industry overall.
Absolutely. And I think if I can just add to that, any organisation that continues to evolve and grow is a sustainable organisation. So it may be that you might be compliant and that's all great, but you know, what are some opportunities for that leverage and growth that you have as a business? Thank you guys, that's great. So I've got questions, if you wouldn't mind entertaining me on continuing on that basis. One of the biggest questions I've got is, okay, what do I get for my money? What do I get in my hand when this audit is complete?
I think Liz has already alluded to that. It is a statement, and in most cases saying, as a result of a desktop audit, and a detail of what that looked like and what was audited, and how you rated against that, is what you're receiving in your hand at the end of it. So a document from an external organisation, so not an internal document saying I meet these standards, but an external document saying, yes, they meet these and here are the reasons why, and here's how that audit was conducted.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, great.
And typically, Laurie, with insurance brokers, they're typically looking for somebody external to your organisation who has reviewed your practices. So it's surprising that these audits haven't been happening in the past. And some will. Some people are actually asking people to review their policies and procedures and just giving them a letter. So I think it's an opportunity to have that report to provide to your assurer, to national parks, to say, look, here's some evidence that we are compliant and working towards improving ourselves continually.
Yeah, brilliant. Sorry, go on, Jim.
I was going to say, to Liz's point, one of the organisations I know of has a statement in their insurance that says that they do a regular quality review, and it actually has a time period against it, an external quality review. So now I don't know if that's specific to that organisation and that insurance, but possibly worth organisations looking at their insurance policies around that sort of thing.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, obviously, we have a huge range of businesses and organisations in our sector. So some of a micro scale, and that might be a small business with a few leaders that may not be a 7-day week role, but then there's the other extreme where there's big camp facilities with multiple activities. How do you work with that variation and scalability of the audit process?
I think you have to be realistic. One of the larger organisations, say it was a state government department that said, we want you to come in and do an audit. Now, if they've got a centralised policies and procedures, and we could probably provide an audit of that within the day. But if we're starting to go beyond that and there's multiple sets of procedures, there's unique procedures for individual sites, and they operate at 45 different sites, we're not getting into that level of detail in one day. So I think the reality is with that one, we would discuss, look, this is going to go beyond a one-day event if you want us to look at that, and so we'd price that accordingly.
Wonderful. And can I ask that, obviously that's a discussion that's really important to have with that business on the basis of the needs of the organisation as well. Great. Jeffrey, did you want to add?
I guess, and also being mindful that a smaller business, we're still auditing against the same standards. So whether it's a small operation or a large operation, it is the same standard that needs to be looked at across every aspect that's relevant to that organisation. So there is definitely that requirement for the day. Just being a small organisation doesn't mean you necessarily only look at a small part of the standard. It is one standard, and every activity you're doing that applies to it is relevant.
Great. And I know Jane could probably attest to this, but the Australian Camps Association conference that was held recently, we had a discussion from an insurance broker that said, you've got to prepare your documentation a lot earlier when you're looking at renewals, and it has to be at forefront of your mind that you can't just wait until the week of renewal to get this up and running. Obviously, with that in mind, this sort of thing is not just about insurance renewals, but it certainly helps with that process. Am I correct?
Yeah, spot on, Laurie. First, let me say thanks for the invitation to be involved today. Great to hear the good work that's going on up there, and it's been excellent from my point of view. I've only been involved in this review process on behalf of the Australian Camps Association since late last year, so it's early days in terms of 5 months with a review committee looking at the quality tourism framework and the AAAS as part of that. A timely review insofar as accreditation schemes have been around for decades in various forms, and time to just have a look and deal with some of the issues that are out there, including the insurance one that you've just mentioned. We had a forum with a number of insurers about 6 or 8 weeks ago. And based on the presentation that happened at the national conference 2 weeks ago, we heard a lot about the big picture macro difficulties for the insurance sector worldwide. And so camps and adventure operators shouldn't be taking knockbacks and increased premiums. Personally, it's more to do with the hard and soft markets around insurance that go in cycles. So that was spelt out in quite a bit of detail and repeatedly. But we're a little bit, as a committee, we're a little bit undecided as to whether insurers are going to take much notice in this current climate of the work that we're doing around the AAAS and the QTF accreditation. Because it's a hard market, they're really looking at the financial side of the insurance. But what we have heard is that going forward, if you are not an accredited business, then you're unlikely to get insurance. So it's going to be starting point number one. Be accredited, and then we'll look at other aspects of your operations.
Thanks, Jay. And I thought that was an important sideline to put in there, because in New South Wales particularly, we're not as accredited, if I can phrase it that way, in this state, because we haven't really followed a lot of the QTF mandatory requirements in this state versus Victoria, who's done a great job in sort of making a lot of the systems and processes mandatory. Like I think it's your Department of Education requires all camps to be accredited.
Well, not so much that. What the DET mandated decades ago was that if you are a DET school, you must go to an accredited campsite. Right. So we now, as part of this review committee that Laurie is a part of, is that we want to be having that conversation not only with DET in Victoria, but in other states and territories, and to private and independent school authorities to get them to start requiring their schools to do the same. And if that happens, then it does, you can call it the carrot or the stick approach, but what it does do is that camps and adventure operators will have to get on board with making sure that they are accredited and signed off on the AAAS or an accreditation scheme that those education authorities will mandate effectively.
Great. So basically what this pilot can do is certainly help businesses in getting that step ahead, so that when they are applying for that accreditation, they've got that documentation, but also processes and skills in order to be able to get that through.
Yeah, correct. So the QTF also operates on a desktop audit in sort of two distinct phases, one around the business itself and how it's established, and then the second part of it, of course, is the adventure aspects of it, and ostensibly through the AAAS. So the scheme exists, but the challenge for us as a committee and for the QTF accreditation scheme for camps and outdoor adventure operators is to the heart of what Liz and Jeff were saying before. It's the quality of the work that's being done by operators, and how somebody can attest to the fact that it is being done, and it's being done and managed regularly. Hence perhaps the annual audits that you're running as a pilot. So yes, when Laurie mentioned this in our meeting on Tuesday, it definitely piqued my interest and our interest, because you are going to have some good data in terms of which businesses are prepared to actually pay extra to have the external audit, and the degree to which those audits become accepted by schools and other organisations. I should mention that one of and there are a number of issues that we're all facing, and one of them is that camps and operators in Victoria and elsewhere, notably in South Australia, high rates of QTF accreditation. Schools are still asking campsites for the same sort of information and documentation that they have provided as part of their QTF. So it's pretty frustrating for a business to have gone through all of this work, but then to be individually asked by a school, sometimes by a principal who's charged with visiting a campsite, to attest to all of this. So we do want to actually promote the scheme to the point where businesses are not being preoccupied with the compliance side of it. We want it done, and we want it done well, but we want people to recognise that it's been done and done well, and not take up the time and energy of businesses having to go through all of the same stuff repeatedly.
Yeah, no, really great points, Jay. Liz, did you?
Jay, do you think that's partially because at the moment the system is primarily a desk audit that's been, while I understand that the person who comes in and does the accreditation check, it doesn't necessarily have a background with the adventure activity standard. So is this part of, well, it's great, you say that you've got them, and somebody looks and says you've got them, but at the moment, neither accreditation scheme that we have in the country actually goes, what quality are they?
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
If I can answer that one, if I deal with a lot of schools, and for instance, as a licensed tour operator with a permit where the government checks my insurance, schools still ask me for a copy of my insurance, not for my commercial operator's permit. Yeah. So I think what's happening at headquarters in the education department in Victoria, or in Parks Victoria, if we're just talking my state, as far as how they manage camps and the like and what they require, isn't filtering down to the leadership teams in the schools. Yeah, all the leadership teams in the schools should have to ask is, check that are you a licensed operator if the activity is on public land? Because they wouldn't know how to check the insurance anyway. They don't understand that's got to be APRA approved or whatever. And with the camps, the same thing. I think it's probably educating the end user in a lot of things that we're failing to do, which we fail to do in lots of ways in the outdoors.
Sorry,
back
go
to
ahead,
Liz's
Jay.
point, you've actually nailed it. I mean, the challenge at the moment is the quality of the verification visit. And under the current scheme, in all likelihood, once every 3 years, you're going to get a 3-hour visit for the QTF that is to cover off on the AAAS. So the committee is concerned that and you've mentioned this and it's accurate, that in some states and territories, the person who's doing your verification visit may not have a good grasp on the AAAS and the adventure side of it. And that's something that the committee really wants to address. So with that in mind, the ACA has a memorandum of understanding with the Australian Tourism Industry Council around this whole review. And there are 8 key sort of dot points to be covered off on. 5 of them are around the recruitment, training, endorsement of verification officers. And the committee clearly wants that aspect of the whole scheme to be strengthened. So what you're doing there in New South Wales and ACT with this trial of auditing fits really nicely as a pilot to what we're looking at as a committee to try and strengthen the scheme. So, having said that, the ACA had its own scheme for decades. And at some point in time, as a board, decided that, and I'll just use somebody's quote, it's not a good idea to have the lunatics in charge of the asylum. So we do have camps and adventure operators that have concerns that they might be audited by somebody in the industry, and therefore the details of A, the desktop audit, and B, a visit and the report that comes from that is of concern to some operators, because they might not see it as an arm's length thing, and they might be audited by somebody who is potentially a competitor of theirs in the industry.
Yeah. Look, Jay, I think that's been our challenge in Australia for 20 years, having been accredited in Victoria, and I was managing a site, and having been accredited in the US under the American Camping Association accreditation scheme, it was completely different. So the concept of having external auditors who may or may not be competitors, you know, so in this case, all three of us aren't really competitors to the operators that are in industry. So that level of trust, hopefully, you know, we can build rather than chip away at. But it's been one of the issues that we've had in our country for years, is that trust that together we can really improve our industry. And just because I come and look at your site doesn't mean I'm going to walk away and tell everybody what I found, you know, and that's been a real issue historically speaking. So whatever we can do to help the process that you're going through with the review of the situation in Victoria, let us know as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I thought that was really important to build in what's actually going on at a national level as well. And like I say, I think this sort of process for any business will be the start of something that they'll continually see the benefits of. And I've struggled at trying to maintain, to equate the value of, you know, what is potentially $1,000 investment into this audit and what that has back. I'd love anyone's thoughts on that, but I can see that, you know, whether it's insurance, whether it's accreditation, whether it's just professional development in their own investment, that this $1,000 can replicate 6, 7, 8 times in a year for a business. A question to the auditors again. If businesses were keen to have their processes audited, what have they got to have for you ready? What do they need to start the process?
Liz alluded to that earlier. You need to have something documented to begin with. If there's nothing written down to start with, then we're going to have problems, particularly as this is primarily desktop. So without some policies and procedures, there's going to be a real difficulty auditing against the adventurous activity standards. So that's a key starting point, really. And obviously, the other side of that is access to staff on the day that we organise.
Yep.
So, do you want to add to that, Liz?
Look, I think the intention of the adventure activity standards is that somebody who runs an organisation takes the time to review their practices in line with the adventure activity standards. So that's step one. The paperwork that comes is step two. And yeah, I think access to a couple of staff members. And, you know, in today's world, we can do that via Zoom. That's fairly simple. And I think then the carry on, just speaking to what you were saying before, what's the investment for the individual? You can probably pay $300 at the moment for a coaching session for your own professional development. And the reality is the approach we're taking here is, let's have a look. Let's talk about where you're looking really good. Let's talk about some resources that will help you bring some of your policies and procedures to a different place. And an example I use there is, some people have a 3-line statement about child protection. The statement might be right. Therefore they have a policy, but the reality is they don't have anything to back it up. So if you know, it's that concept that goes improving what you have with a conversation that says, hey, these might improve it, this may improve it. And I can see that you've thought really deeply about the staff that you put in the field and the qualifications they have, but it's not written down anywhere. So we may find out through, and that's why the conversation happens, is to say, I can see that you've got this, tell me what you do in this circumstance, and you build from that. So it's really about the opportunity for somebody who's been around in the industry for a while to have a look and say, hey, let's have the conversation about it. So I think those things are important: paperwork and conversation.
Yeah. Awesome. And I wanted to just reiterate that when we went through this process, if you're a regular viewer of our Connect and Shares, you know we went out for a call for our auditors and they were assessed against certain criteria. So the quality of what we're trying to start with this project is incredibly scrutinised, and it has been board endorsed. But the three auditors that we have been involved in, if I can speak on your behalf here, your experience in the AAAS goes back to day dot when it was formed. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
And before.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't show your age there, Jeffrey.
It's already here. That greatness.
Any questions from any of the businesses online about the process, or questions for the auditors at all?
I know that one of the brokers that I work with will take this quite seriously as a first step. Yeah, so it will help someone chasing insurance in that case. Yeah, it might not mean it's cheaper, but it may mean you actually get insurance. Yeah, in the longer term, I think we have to, as I put in the chat, the insurers are going to, and the brokers are going to require physical audits of what we actually do, but one step at a time. I think this is an amazing step forward.
No, brilliant. Thank you, David. And yes, I've had similar conversations with brokers saying the same sort of thing. So we're trying to get ahead of the 8 ball here and provide tools that they're actually requesting potentially more and more. Any other questions? I see we've got Mick and Rob online, or Stuart, anything else that comes to mind, feel free to jump in. But guys, I suppose I'm interested to hear from you. Have you seen any of the businesses that have said that they are compliant and gone in to find probably what is the opposite, and how have you worked with them to look at that, not through an audit process, but generically in the industry? I'm keen to understand how we can get people practicing a lot more of the AAAS requirements. The big question.
Yeah, it is a big question. Look, I'll give two statements on that. One is just referring to an organisation that our third auditor, who isn't here with us today, has audited, and just the fact that they went out of their way to get audited against the standards at a point in time when it's not required, indicated their level of interest in growth and doing things to a standard, doing things what they considered doing the right thing in the industry. Now, the aspects that came out of that showed that they're really keen to grow was about, well, we're not meeting this particular standard. What can we do differently? How can we do it differently? And they've gone out to a number of others to go, how do you do it? We've been told we're not up to standard. How do you do it? So look, that showed the level of growth. Another example would be those reviews of existing documentation, and I go, right, here's where we've got some gaps. Now that organisation has then gone back to look at how they can address gaps.
And were there significant gaps, Jeffrey? Like, I'm interested to see, you know, are we finding things that are really a risk to the industry, or we're finding things that are just improvements?
So that first organisation, it was probably more improvements. The second organisation, potential risk, but at the same time, it's probably more organisational improvements.
Awesome.
Then, yeah.
Great, because what I'm trying to highlight here, I think, is generically we do things well in this industry. And I think we all understand risk because of what we do every day. So it's not necessarily someone who is doing something extremely wrong that should get this audit. It should be any business, because it is about that fine tuning. It is about those options and opportunities that they may not see, because either one, they're too close to it, or two, they haven't got the time to go through every good practice guide that exists on the AAAS portal. So I just wanted to really hone in on that fact that, you know, if you think you're doing things right, this is still a program that's for you. It's something that you should be doing as a good business practice.
You know what, I think the reality of that point, Laurie, is that one of the things that I used to say when I was deeply involved in a very large organisation and on call 24/7 is we want to be able to sleep at night. And the approach that I think all three of the audit panel are taking is it's not a big stick approach. It's about going, I as a small provider, I don't have anywhere to go that says, am I doing things okay, other than that feeling that I'm doing things okay. And I'll give an example, is that an external audit that I did for an organisation, they had all sorts of procedures in place to make sure that the people who were on the ground were doing the job that they were trained to do. But when I said the question was, I don't see a matrix anywhere about what kind of qualifications you're looking for what activity. So, you know, I put myself at risk if I put that down on paper. And it was a really good conversation. And I said, oh, mate, I think you put yourself at risk by not putting it down on paper. And it went to then a conversation for him about understanding that relationship between our policies and procedures and how rich they can be to support us, if indeed implemented, and that we have something to go back. And then, but the conversation we then had was, well, what happens if I can't find somebody on that day? And I said, good question. What do you do? And that question's really live right now with an industry that is so short-staffed, that are looking for staff next week to do a journey-based program in here, et cetera, What do you do? And you can make allowances in those circumstances, but you need a process to do it. So I think that reality is yes, we're doing good stuff out there.
Yep.
There's some things that we don't understand. So what my then suggestion is, if you are not linked in with your peak organisation, if you are not going to workshops, if you are not finding out what research you're doing, those are the steps that are going to help you continue to improve. You're looking really good. You're doing this, this, and this. I can't see that you've had your vehicle serviced for the past 3 years. Oh, I do it myself. Okay. What does that do for you? You know, so the reality is that we can move beyond with some coaching, with some ideas. This could improve it, that could improve it. And I think where we have done that is people have jumped at it. So that's really good. They really want to learn and grow. And for years, people have been saying, yeah, but who can I get to come and have a look at my organisation who isn't a direct competitor? And it's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point before, I think just on that confidentiality, that, you know, this program, I have got the three of you to sign something to say that this is a process that will remain confidential with those operators.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And look, we have that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, and not only that, as was alluded to earlier by Liz, it's that none of the three of us are direct competitors in the industry in any way. Yes, we're involved in, but we're not competitors.
Yes. So. Sorry, Liz, did you want to add something else?
I forgot now, Laurie. I haven't had my second coffee for the day.
No problem at all. Guys, is there any questions? Sorry, I'm just got sidelined by a comment in the chat. Not a critical mass yet to require. Yeah, so I think from Rob's just sort of said, you know, obviously we haven't got a huge demand for this at the moment, but can I just stress, I think we will. You know, everything we've discussed today along the lines of our potential that our Department of Education tomorrow could go, everyone needs to be accredited. That could be quite disastrous for our industry because we don't have a lot of accredited providers in this state. So we've got to think about that potential. We've also got to think about insurance, as we've said. We've got to think about just professional development and ongoing improvement to business. But we've got to also think about the business's sustainability overall. And I think this sort of process, hand on heart, you know, when we looked at this, we went, wow, this ticks so many boxes. So, yeah, we're incredibly thankful for our auditors jumping onto this program, but we hope that businesses do look at this seriously and consider what it can do for your business and also your customers, because as it says there, it helps improve not only the business, but it helps in other activities as well, including your own promotion as an organisation. So, guys, sorry, go on.
Us Mexicans are going to be looking closely at this because a couple of years ago, the minister directed Parks Victoria that all licensed tour and activity operators had to comply with the AAS in Victoria. But as a part of that, they also said that Parks Victoria had to develop a process for ensuring that this happened, yeah, which they haven't yet, I might add. They're struggling with that. So this concept that's happening here may be a step towards providing systems for land managers when they've got that sort of requirement to actually start to check that things are happening. I mean, we don't want that to happen now. We just want to watch it and step quietly, but it works. It could be a great process for our land manager, for instance.
Yeah, brilliant.
Dave, the interesting thing is that if somebody in WA wanted their to be audited as an organisation, I think we have the capacity to do that because the adventure activity standards are national. And so the reality is in the world we live in right now with Zoom conversations, I'm sure Jeffrey and we would all be happy to look at an organisation from another part of the country.
Absolutely, Liz. And I think I've already extended it to my counterparts who I talk with every week, Andrew in Victoria and Dom in Queensland and Colin in WA and Andrew in SA, saying, look, this is a pilot. We are happy to look at any state in this process, but it just happens to be run by us. So, we've got to think federally. I sit on the Outdoor Council of Australia with them. So we've got a national perspective on what we need to do in the outdoors. So this is a start and hopefully in the future it might be run at a federal level. But this is a great start. Thank you, Jay, for your comment. It's great to have you online and you're welcome to join any Friday. You don't have to worry that you're Victorian because we have a Victorian here as well.
I only worried about being a Victorian last year during a 4-month lockdown. So
we worry about being New South Wales because we're not allowed anywhere. But no, thank you, Jay, for coming along and really appreciate
thank you
to it as well. Guys, I think that pretty much wraps us up. We've got 5 minutes left in any case someone wants to bring up a topic of interest or discuss anything, but there's our website there, so you can jump onto the portal and book your audit through our website, and choose your partner in crime who's on your screen there. So yeah, we can certainly get you started in the process through the website. Thank you, guys. You have all a wonderful weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you next Friday. Next Friday is the NOIC week, and we'll give you a rundown on the program. Mark and co will be here to tell you all about that. Take care, everyone.
Enjoy your masterclass, Leslie and Laurie.
We will. I think it's going to be